Once upon a time, in a small town in the middle of nowhere, there lived a little boy named Toby. Toby was an ordinary kid who liked playing with his dog, Sparky, riding his bike, and blowing bubbles. But Toby's bubbles weren't like any other bubbles. His bubbles were big, really big, the biggest bubbles anyone had ever seen. Now, normally this would be great for a kid who liked blowing bubbles. He could win prizes at the county fair, or become famous in a circus, or even befriend an alien who mistakenly thought the bubble was a UFO. But unfortunately, Toby didn't live in a place where giant bubbles were considered impressive. In fact, his town was filled with people who were more interested in things that made sense. And so Toby's giant bubbles were more of a nuisance than anything else. They floated down streets, popped into houses, and even disrupted traffic by covering cars and suds. And so while blowing bubbles was fun, it quickly became something that Toby had to do in secret. But one day, while hiding behind some bushes, blowing bubbles, Toby accidentally blew the world's biggest bubble ever. It was so big, so round and so heavy that it floated over the bush, hovered for a moment, then popped right into Toby's face. Startled, Toby immediately fell backwards. But before he knew what was happening, he felt himself being lifted off the ground. The force from the popping bubble had pushed all the air out of his lungs, and now it was sucking him back up into the sky. Toby screamed as he floated higher and higher, until he was sure he'd be sucked right into the clouds. Then, thankfully, the bubble popped again, this time on a tree, which slowed him down enough to land safely on a soft patch of grass. Toby was shaken but okay. Then he looked around and realized he wasn't alone. Sparky had been sucked inside the bubble with him, and now the two were hanging upside down in the air, like some sort of strange canine kite. Startled, Toby and Sparky instinctively started chewing on the bubble, but the more they chewed, the more it grew. Finally, the bubble popped and sent them both tumbling to the ground. Thankfully, Toby landed on his back with Sparky happily licking his face. But their moment of relief was short-lived. As soon as they hit the ground, the bubble began to grow bigger and bigger until it was a gigantic sphere that towered over Toby and covered the entire town square. The bubble was so big that people from all over town came running to see what was going on. They stared up at the bubble in amazement as it slowly began to drift towards them. Then suddenly, the bubble began to shake violently, and everyone gasped as they watched it wobble precariously in the air. It looked like the world's biggest ball was about to drop from the sky and crush the entire town. People started screaming and running for cover. A woman in a polka dot dress tripped over her pet iguana, a man in a striped bathing suit jumped into a manhole, and a guy in a Hawaiian shirt tried to hide in a hot dog stand. Everyone was doing their best to escape the giant bubble, except for Toby. Toby didn't want to run away. This bubble may have been an accident, but it was still his bubble and he was determined to fix it. So he ran through the panicked crowd, dodging feet and bicycle wheels, until he reached his old nemesis, Mayor. The mayor was known throughout the town as the Bubble Buster because he had a pathological hatred of bubbles. When Toby had accidentally popped a few of his precious prize-winning petunias last year, the mayor had chased Toby around town with a pair of garden shears yelling, "I'm gonna pop you like one of your silly bubbles." And now Toby needed the mayor's help. "Mayor Bumbleton, please help me," Toby yelled over the din. "If that bubble lands on the town, it'll smash everything." The mayor stopped momentarily, then shook his head and continued running. "No way, kid," he yelled back. "You and your stupid dog created this mess. You're the only one who can fix it." Then he disappeared into the crowd, and so Toby had no choice but to take matters into his own hands. He closed his eyes, took a deep breath, and started blowing. At first it was hard. The air wouldn't come out of his mouth no matter how hard he tried. But then he remembered what his mom always told him when he was blowing his nose. Think about blowing out a candle on a cake. And just like that, the air came rushing out of his mouth. At first it was just a small stream of air, but after a few more deep breaths, Toby was able to create a steady flow that shot out of his mouth like a fire hose. Then he did something crazy. He aimed his stream of air at the giant bubble and blew. Suddenly, the bubble began to shrink dramatically. Everyone watching gasped as they saw the bubble getting smaller and smaller. But then something unexpected happened. The giant bubble burst, and instead of showering the town in soapy water, it simply disappeared, vanished. Turns out that Toby's bubble-blowing superpower actually sucked the giant bubble back up into the sky. And as the townspeople stared up in amazement, the bubble reappeared high above them in the form of a beautiful rainbow. Everyone cheered as the bubble floated over the town, leaving a sparkling trail in its wake. Then the bubble popped one last time and showered the town in confetti. The townspeople were stunned silent as they looked around at the colorful pieces of paper floating around them. Then they all began to laugh and celebrate. Even the mayor couldn't help but crack a smile. "Well," he said, "that's one way to put some bang in your bacchus." From that day on, Toby was no longer the weird kid who blew bubbles. He was Toby the Magnificent, the boy who saved the town from a giant bubble. And to celebrate, the mayor even let Toby blow a few bubbles in the town square. They weren't the biggest bubbles in the world, but to Toby, they were the most beautiful. And so if you ever in that town and you see a boy blowing bubbles in the park, don't stare. Just let him blow his bubbles in peace. After all, you never know. He might just be the boy who saved his town from a giant bubble. Once upon a time, There were 3 bears who lived in a cave. There was Papa Bear, who was big and strong, Mama Bear, who was kind and caring, and Baby Bear, who was small and mischievous. One day, Baby Bear was playing in the cave when he stumbled upon a box filled with magic beans. Not knowing what they were, he ate them all. Suddenly, Baby Bear felt a strange tingling sensation all over his body. Then he started to grow, and I mean really grow. He grew taller than Papa Bear, bigger than the cave itself. In fact, he grew so big that he poked a hole right through the roof. Then he floated up into the sky and landed on a cloud. Baby Bear was scared, then confused, then he got bored. So he started stomping on the cloud, and the more he stomped, the angrier the sky got. Soon, the sky was filled with dark clouds and flashes of lightning. Then Baby Bear heard a loud voice that boomed, "Who's stomping on my cloud?" Startled, Baby Bear looked around, but he couldn't see anyone. Then he realized that the voice belonged to the cloud he was standing on. "I'm sorry," Baby Bear said. "I didn't mean to stomp on your cloud. I just got a little carried away." "Humph," the cloud grumbled. "Well, I suppose I could make an exception and let you stay here forever. Or if you don't like clouds, I could pop you back down to earth." "Oh, I'd love to stay here, but I have to get home," Baby Bear said. "My parents are probably worried sick about me." "All right then," the cloud said. "I'll take you home." And with that, the cloud swooped down and landed on Baby Bear's head like a fluffy hat. When Baby Bear and the cloud reached the cave, Papa Bear and Mama Bear rushed outside to see what was going on. "Oh, Baby Bear, we were so worried about you," Mama Bear said. She gave Baby Bear a tight hug. "Where have you been? And why is there a giant cloud on your head?" "It's not just any cloud," Baby Bear said proudly. "It's my cloud, and this grumpy old cloud is going to take me anywhere I want to go." Then Baby Bear climbed onto the cloud and yelled, "Let's go to the Candy Kingdom." And with that, the cloud floated away, taking Baby Bear on an adventure that neither of them would ever forget.